Well, good morning, good afternoon. I'm Stephen Midgley, CMO at Media Ballet, and welcome to Media Ballet Dan Week. In this session, we're going to talk about from guidelines to guardrails, operationalizing brand identity. And I'm super excited to be joined by Heather Bassett, Senior Director of Client Engagement at Brand Active. Hi, Heather.
Hi, Stephen. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Yeah, it's going to be a great topic. And as we both work in the world of marketing, we know the importance of brand and the challenges that brand can plague market, especially when working with different aspects of any organization. So some housekeeping items. Like all Media Ballet Dam sessions for the next 2 days, this session is being recorded and will be shared with each of you. If you have questions, please drop them in the chat. We've got Ian behind the scenes, behind the curtain. He'll be monitoring those and we'll get around to answering them at the end of the webinar. If we don't have time, we will follow up with you offline. So each of you will get a copy of the recording, and Heather and I will be happy to answer questions during the session or afterwards. So we'll get into it. As I mentioned just briefly, for most marketers, a rebrand is one of the most exciting and daunting initiatives that you can take on. Really, as marketers, the opportunity to rebrand your organization is one of the most fulfilling initiatives that you'll take on, but one that's full of potential pitfalls and can go sideways really quickly. So a brand launch is a major milestone, but managing it with control and visibility at scale becomes the next challenge. Today, we're going to explore the challenges of brand management, both during the brand launch process and post-launch. We'll talk about the enforceable guardrails you can implement to ensure success and the importance of having strong brand guidelines as a foundation. And we'll talk about providing real-time visibility into how brand content is accessed, adapted, and distributed across the organization. So Heather, I'll pass it over to you and
Yeah,
let you introduce Brand Active to the audience.
yes, you bet. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with Brand Active, rebranding is all we do. Um, we have been engaged and involved and trusted by some of the Fortune 2000 and really large healthcare systems for almost, well, I guess 30 years of brand implementation experience. Typically, what we do is we spend time making sure that your vision is really clear and we are your trusted rebrand implementation experts so that you can deliver what you have to do on time, on budget, and really implement it across your entire organization. Um, we've spent probably, oh my goodness, um, well over 1,100 projects globally with doing rebrand implementations. And often what we find by partnering with us and clients that we work with, on average, save about 30% of their costs. One of my clients specifically had saved $10 million in their rebrand just by spending the time with us and working through it. So I agree with Stephen completely. A time to do a rebrand is so exciting, but it can be really, really daunting and scary. That's why we get involved in this work because it's actually super exciting. There's a lot of ways where we can support. If you pop to the next slide for me, Stephen, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Um, some of the things, and many of you on your journey right now, because I know we've got lots of different folks from lots of different industries, which is great on the call. Many of you are already thinking through the business strategy. And this is how you as organizations are going to achieve your goals and you're going to create value. So you're thinking about your market positioning and your growth opportunities, and that's fantastic. You might be doing some M&A spin-offs, operational priorities, doing some acquisitions, also fantastic. Then there's this other side of it where you're going, okay, now we're contemplating doing a rebrand. We're going to hire a creative agency, and that's fantastic. Or you've got great talent in-house that you're wanting to leverage. When you're working with a creative agency, those are the folks that are going to build what that brand stands for, how it shows up, what it actually looks like, how it connects with that business strategy. This is where you get into that really great stuff around your brand purpose and your values and your positioning. And this is where Brand Active comes in right afterwards, is we actually dig into how you actually implement your rebrand. This is like taking you from concept into execution and helping that roadmap come to life across all of the touch points, the teams and folks that you work with in any geography, and really looking for the places to do so with clarity, consistency, and speed. Now, here's the fun thing. When you're thinking through business and brand strategies, the clients we work with where they actually bring it together in real time to shape the vision together, it works beautifully. It ties in that you're really using your brand to enable what your business strategy is and vice versa. And it becomes a really strategic component on how you're going to grow and elevate your business. Implementing it is equally as important. So when you think about what does Brand Active do compared to an agency, a creative agency, if you will, you as the business and the agency shape that vision, and we build the plan to help you execute it. So it's very oriented in how do you actually bring that brand to life in real time. And definitely lots of fun conversations around timelines and budgets and how you're going to make it real and all the different assets, which make it really quite entertaining to do. The one thing I would say that we notice as well too is when you're thinking about developing your brand strategy, think about how you're going to implement it at the same time. So then it really kind of can work in lockstep together. But that's a little bit about us and kind of the work that we do. Thinking through rebranding, if we move on to the next piece of the conversation, and this is where we get really excited in the work that we do with our clients. We want to help turn that brand strategy, that beautiful work, that visual identity, all of the wonderful things that I've done with marketing and brand teams into reality. Not just into reality, but sustaining it and keeping it there. So the things that we see around like core implementation services, we're scoping and assessing. It's the rebrand implementation, thinking about how you're going to move from planning into proper asset management to execution, and then long-term brand sustainability. But then there's also some of these pieces on how do you actually sustain what you're doing, managing your brand, the change components of it, optimizing the brand that you have, and then marketing processes. So what you see is like there's lots of elements where you're really getting clear, and some of the work that we do, we're going to help you figure out what you need to get done, how you're going to plan for it, how you're going to execute it, and then how do you maintain it. And as many of you who have gone through rebrands, I think, Stephen, you've gone through a rebrand yourself, as you would know firsthand. You can't do all of what you need to do during a rebrand without some really great change management. At the heart of any rebrand is a human being that you work with who cares about the brand. What information and KPIs do you have? Do you have great brand architecture and guidelines and all the things to make those brand components come to life? And then how you actually govern your brand. I know this is a really hot topic when it comes down to when you're actually starting to execute a brand is how do you govern it? How do you sustain it? So when Stephen was nice enough to ask me to join you all, we started to talk about some of the challenges that come into the mix. And I wanted to highlight about 5 of them for you. And some of, highlight the 5. So if we just move on to the next slide, that would be perfect. Thank you. When we're thinking about going beyond your logo, rebrand is beyond the logo. And there's 5 things that we typically see, and I'm happy to share some of the other components of what we often do to help mitigate some of the challenges that we have. So the first one, and I really want to ground this for a second, most rebrands don't struggle for the reasons people expect. Oftentimes, it is never the creative solution. It's how it's actually implemented, maintained, and governed afterwards is to where there's a disconnect. And this brings me to the first point there, which is strategy and execution, and there is a gap. So when you're thinking about the investment that you're making in defining your new brand, your positioning is clear, the design is strong, and leaders are aligned. But when you start to actually see how folks interpret your brand a little bit differently, it looks somewhat nuanced. Your vendors might execute it inconsistently. Maybe they don't get the right color palette. You might have a different way that the brand is presented across various environments and geography, how it shows up on signage versus digital and different spaces. And that's a lot of what's underestimated. So you get a brand that looks fabulous in a presentation, but is a bit fragmented in reality. We often address that with clear brand guidelines. And so many creative agencies will do beautiful brand architecture. Having really specific, clear brand guidelines are going to help you mitigate some of those risks. Second one, hidden operational complexity. Oftentimes when we're looking at it's a marketing initiative, for those of you marketers on the call, it's just a marketing initiative. When reality, a rebrand is a wonderful place to actually do large scale operational transformation. You're not just changing a logo. You're changing hundreds or thousands of assets across locations and lots of various components. That way you have to deal with permitting, landlord approvals, manufacturing timelines, supply chain constraints often comes through. So what becomes a focus on a simple brand launch is far more complex than required. And so one of the things we do to help mitigate that challenge is do a really comprehensive brand audit. Make sure you know all of the things that you want to change and how you're actually going to decide, do you want to keep it? sort of like spring cleaning for your organization. That's sort of the most basic level. The third thing we see is lack of visibility and control. And this one's an interesting one because it's sort of like a lot of organizations we work with as well too don't actually have a clear picture about what they need to change or where. So we talked about the asset inventories, or the data is inconsistent, or they don't have any KPIs, you don't have a centralized view of progress or cost or execution quality, or who owns putting signage up, or who makes the decision rights. And those of you in some of the organizations, we think a little bit about higher ed, where you have lots of decision makers that have a lot of autonomy and maybe is a little bit decentralized, it can be really hard to get to good, clear decision making, struggle with prioritization effectively, and you don't really have a great view on costs and how to manage it. And the way that we mitigate that a lot is focusing on rebranding with marketing, but marketing at the center. So when you think about doing an M&A, any type of acquisition, often it's the operations of the business that's driving it. When marketing sits at the helm, there's some really lovely views on how you can see the impact and the cost around your brand, and you have more autonomy and control about your brand governance in that moment. The fourth one, I don't think will be a surprise for many of you on a call. If you don't have stakeholders who are aligned with the direction that you're going and you have some change resistance, it's people. And it's not because they don't care. You could have leaders who are completely aligned, but employees don't understand why the change is behind the brand. And the thing that I would encourage you all to think through when you're talking about change resistance, we're kind of wired to fight it, even though we might want to. We have lots of questions. We want to understand how it affects our day to day. The mitigation strategy we often recommend is to prioritize stakeholder engagement and change management at the onset. Don't wait to do it at the end. Make sure you're leaving time to do it at the beginning, and that often allows you to get in front of it. Now, the last one I left is a super important one, and one where we have a lot of discussion and conversation, and it's around budget, timing, and governance breakdowns. How do you actually manage your rebrand and your assets and make sure that the integrity of your new brand comes to life and is staying the way you want to see it? So we often see timelines that are driven by really big announcement moments rather than the
Mm-hmm.
operational realities. So when you think about maybe you might have a leadership change, or you're trying to figure out when you're going to do your quarter earnings and launch it that way, not necessarily the most operationally realistic. So when you're thinking about budgets are focused on the strategy and the creative part, but don't actually account for implementation, it's going to take you time to do manufacturing and prototyping to make sure your signage is really reflecting your brand well. You don't want to rush it. Those things take time to be curated in a really good way. And oftentimes, when there is no clear governance model or no system for prioritizing decisions, tracking progress, or managing a lot of the trade offs, without that structure, rebrands tend to drift. And when we're thinking about, they take a little bit longer, they cost more, and they deliver less consistently. And so I realize with the work that Brand Active does, the mitigation strategy is make the time to properly plan. Part of that comes down to having clear decision makers, owners of what you have, and ensuring that what you're doing is going to set you up for success, not just to get the brand launched, but for you to sustain it. So when I like take a step back and when I look at all of the things that we actually see with the challenges in rebranding, they're not creative. It's not related to the creative. It's the operational, organizational, and systemic. And we find that's where the best opportunity is, because when those pieces are managed really well, the
Mm-hmm.
impact of your rebrand is significantly amplified.
Yeah, that's some great insight, Heather. As you mentioned, I've been through a massive company-wide
Mm-hmm.
rebrand for a global software company, which I led, and there's some really good there's some good pieces there. I mean, I think marketing is at the helm, and marketing is the driving force. But where we found success was designating brand champions in each department. So the
Mm,
brand isn't just a marketing play, it's an organizational play. And so if you get if you create these brand champions in different departments, you bring them along from the beginning along
yeah,
on this journey, then they understand why we're making these changes and the
yeah,
benefits to the entire org. And they become basically become brand advocates or marketing
yeah.
advocates within their department. Because you're right. I mean, I think the challenge with marketing is everyone thinks they can be a marketer and everyone's got an
Yes,
opinion on marketing. And if
yes,
you don't lay the foundation, basically what happens is everyone starts debating minutia points like why is
yeah,
that green? It should be blue, or what's that and this. And so
exactly.
yeah, it's a it's a pretty daunting task, but it's a very rewarding one. But certainly,
Mhm.
I love the rebrand with marketing at the center, marketing driving the change, and then stakeholder engagement's absolutely critical at the beginning and getting everyone involved. Uh, uh, and positioning it as a not a marketing centric approach, but an organization wide approach.
Yeah. It's
Cool.
interesting because one of the clients that I worked with, or the clients that I do work with, where CMOs like yourself, Stephen, sit sort of strategically with other C-suite executives. Those
Hmm.
are the individuals that can speak to the ROI of the brand or the financial implications to the CFO who's sitting next to them. And what I find is then it becomes a very strategic conversation around a rebrand that's
Hmm.
not a supplementary or decorative type of a transformation. It really is strategic, and there's beautiful ROI that can come from a really solid rebrand, especially when it's governed very well.
Correct. Yeah. So you've got this like these two steps of a brand, a brand relaunch or conducting a rebrand. So one is the
Mm-hmm.
what we just talked about is the process, and you're right, it's very operational focused to get it right. And then they've launched the rebrand. Everyone celebrates with champagne or beer, whatever
Yeah.
whatever they want. But how, in your experience working with clients post brand launch?
Mm-hmm.
How do clients manage brand governance and prevent that brand drift?
Yeah. The brand drift is one that it's so interesting when that topic comes up. So when we our clients that have navigated it really well typically have more than a repository of tools. So you might have, oh, we know where all of our assets are. They might live on a SharePoint, and I'm not picking on SharePoint. It has its place and its purpose for sure. But when it comes down to it, and we ask and probe some questions, a lot of times our clients don't know who has access to the files, how they're using them. I worked with one university not too long ago, and they found 2,000 social media sites where the brand was sort of okay, but not quite what they were looking for. And they went, "Oh my goodness, we didn't even know." That to me is an example of that brand drift that we're talking
Mm,
about. The ones who have really good controls or at least governance and insight around it are the ones who have systems and tools and the processes behind it. So there's a workflow built into the tools that they're using and very clear roles and responsibilities on how to mitigate it so that they know who has access to what and what purpose. And in many cases, they only feed. So, like, let's say you are a marketing specialist in a different part of the country and you have a specific service line, you might only see the assets that are relevant for you. So the
mhm.
margin for error of accidentally using the wrong templates or the wrong brand representation is mitigated because there's beautiful workflows and you have what you need in the moment that you need it. And I think the other side of it is ease of access. If you can't, if it's challenging to find what you need when you're developing a piece of content, or let's say you're working on a client proposal that you're sending out and you maybe grab the wrong one, you're grabbing it because it's not readily available. So ease of access, great tools, good systems and workflow, and very, very clear roles and responsibilities is what I see that helps a ton. The interesting thing too, Stephen, is during a rebrand is a great time to try, if let's say you don't have a system or a tool, it can often
Mhm.
be the right time to implement one. I know some people go, oh my goodness, there's already so much change and you want to add another tool on top of it. But sometimes that's the perfect time because that's when you're going to have most of the folks
Yeah.
that you're working with, kind of like a captive audience, if you will.
Yeah, I agree. I think I think it's longer than I care to admit, but 23 years of B2B SaaS, the biggest change
Mm,
in my time in marketing, which dates back to the late 90s, is just the technology that's out there and this
yeah.
the volume of point solutions. So I think technology plays a critical role in brand governance. I think it's an essential tool. But for those on this webinar today, when you're looking at technology, you need to be thinking about how things integrate so you have a single source of truth and not these what we'll call content silos, where some content's in one place, content's in a different place, they don't connect with each other, and that certainly can lead to a breakdown of brand governance and all the hard work of relaunching your new brand identity. It gets lost. I kind of look at brand as a house of cards. It looks
Mhm.
fantastic, but it takes one person
Yeah.
Usually a rogue salesperson. It takes one person to pull away a card, and the whole thing falls apart. So let's quickly, we've got some time left. We'll just talk a little bit about that technology. And certainly from a Media Valley perspective, we look at digital asset management as sort of foundational from a workflow perspective. And traditionally, DAM was like a library. It's that central source of truth where you store, organize, and retrieve assets. And that still is what it is today, but the DAM or digital asset management platform is becoming something more. It's a living, intelligent ecosystem that's really powered by artificial intelligence. And we use AI a lot, and often it's heavy on the A, light on the I. But there are some really applicable AI use cases that can really help ensure brand compliance and brand governance post brand launch. And so, what we see with DAM and with AI is we see the DAM evolving from this static system of record to a dynamic system of action. And a DAM isn't just a marketing solution, it sits in marketing, but it really is an enterprise wide solution. Much like we talked about with the rebrand, it's led by marketing, but successful rebrands are ones that are managed or that involve the entire organization. It's not contained within marketing. And so modern teams don't just need to find assets, they need help with what they don't know. And that's where the DAM comes into play. They need tools that suggest the best performing content, that automate the approval workflow process, that flags compliance and brand risks, and surfaces the right versions at the right time. And so when you start to unify brand governance through technology and with intelligence, something powerful really happens. You move faster without sacrificing that control. And one of the big choke points for any brand launch, and Heather, you talked about that brand audit. What assets are you keeping? What assets do you not move to the new platform? And part of that audit is in content operations, in ensuring that brand governance is maintained post launch, is around metadata. And metadata is absolutely critical to be able to find the right assets at the right time. And the old school way is using CSV files uploaded, but it takes one error and everything falls apart. And so AI helps streamline the tagging of assets, whether they be PDFs, sales brochures, video. And in reality, manual tagging doesn't just scale in today's environment, but with the help of AI, it does. With AI, assets are enriched with metadata at the moment they're uploaded, visual recognition, object detection, campaign context. It's all analyzed and tagged in seconds. And so it allows people to focus on more strategic initiatives in ensuring brand compliance as opposed to the minutia of tagging assets correctly. And it's really about AI delivering that strong foundation for accurate tagging, even when content is user generated or comes from an external partner. With AI, your DAM helps ensure that it's accurately and richly described. And all that means is it means better search, faster reuse, and better performing content that remains compliant. And when metadata is managed correctly, a key difference is being able to search by meaning or context rather than by file name. And that's where that intelligence comes to play. So when we think of, from a search perspective, one of the frustration points for people is not finding the assets they need at the moment they need them. And so the example on the screen is one of our customers, Hui, what's called Oceanographic Institute, which were the ones who found the Titanic. Great story, great customer with some amazing video. But what they can do is they use narrative search to find assets, and they have tens of thousands of video. And they can actually find by searching, show me images and videos with video footage of marine life surrounding the Titanic stern. And it will show everything that they have in the DAM that is tagged with those keywords. So this is a really powerful way for people to find what they need and when they need it. And when you have better search, so you have strong metadata, when you have better search, it's how you can deliver consistent brand storytelling at scale. At the end of the day, as marketers, we're storytellers, and we want people to tell that story correctly. So you're not just enforcing a set of rules, you're enabling storytelling within a framework that ensures consistency. That's the power of AI-powered digital asset management when it comes to ensuring brand governance. And without that technology, you're relying on one-dimensional file folder structure like SharePoint. It becomes really difficult to manage it, because how many times have we seen a file given an obscure name that you just can never find? And so when we use metadata, we can find things quickly and effectively. And so from a technology perspective, and DAM specifically, there's really sort of three core elements that you need to be looking at when it comes to technology and ensuring brand governance, brand compliance post-launch. The first is discovery. So we talked a little bit of metadata, that's the foundation, but discovery is the foundation for effective brand governance. Without a clear picture of what assets exist, where they live, and who is using them, any guardrails you put in place are built on guesswork. Simply put, you can't govern what you can't see. And finding the right asset at the right time is fundamental to any effective digital asset management system. And some of the things you need to be thinking about when looking at technology, looking at DAM that enables discover capabilities is advanced search. Instantly find what you need, whether you have hundreds of millions of files or several hundred, with speed and simplicity. Being able to search by color, by object, by text recognition, being able to search by similar search, so people who are drinking champagne, search by face recognition. We have clients who do a lot of global conferences, and they can search, show me Phil Peters, and we'll scan all the video that shows pictures, has stills of Phil Peters speaking. We've got one client, Jackie Robinson Foundation. They can do a search on Jackie Robinson holding a baseball bat or Jackie Robinson in a tie, and the hours that are saved by face recognition are significant. Smart image search, so eliminates the hassle of finding the perfect image. Simply enter description like sunset over city skyline, and AI will do the rest for you. So it saves a lot of time. And discover, and you talked about it, Heather, a little bit, is that ease of access, ease of use. The easier a system is to use, the more it will be adopted. The second tenet is, or second core element, is streamline. And streamlining brand governance means removing the friction that causes people to go off platform, skip approvals, or recreate assets from scratch. If it's hard to use, they're not going to use it. They're going to do something different. They're going to create their own little mini library. And so when you do a rebrand, you'll realize you have countless moving parts. There's so many assets that have to be updated and maintained. And so you really need to make sure that it's easy to access those images. And when the right process is also the easiest process, compliance stops being a battle and starts being the default. And so streamlining brand governance really accelerates how people use the technology or the DAM to maintain, to use the right assets, but also helps maintain that brand compliance. And some of the features that a DAM should offer you, portal capability, so be able to create custom branded spaces for sharing digital assets securely, experience portals where you can deliver curated on-brand content through customizable secure microsites for any audience. So it's not just producing the content, it's also distributing that content. Content delivery network or CDN linking, so being able to optimize content and publish wherever the case may be. Templating, empowering teams to create and customize on-brand templates. And that certainly is something that can be challenging, is ensuring that it stays on brand. We've got a great session later on Mark. And then proofing, ensuring that changes that are made stay on brand and fit guidelines. And the third and final core element is control, which as marketers, we all want control and visibility. And control is critical to the long-term success of your brand. So control is what transforms brand guidelines from a document people reference into a system people follow. Without it, guidelines are just suggestions. Control is what gives the teeth and gives marketers visibility. So without control being created, shared, and distributed at scale, maintaining oversight is critical. And control means having the governance, permissions, and visibility needed to ensure assets are used correctly. And Heather talked a little bit about granular control. And so, you've got a field market on the West Coast. They only need to see a certain segment of assets. And so with DAM functionality, you have user permissions or category level permissions that allows admins to control user group actions. So maybe you've got a European sales team, they only see European assets. You've got a West Coast marketing team, a field marketing team, they only see certain assets. So to have control, you've got to maintain that sort of category level, permission level. You need to be able to lock down aspects of your DAM. And so people only see what they need to see. And when that happens, that means that they're getting the true value out of the DAM and they're more inclined to use it and not go rogue and do their own thing. And so we're here because we're committed to building smarter brand infrastructure. So you've done a rebrand, it's a massive undertaking, both financially and time-wise. It's going to help accelerate the growth of your organization. AI enhances that digital asset management by adding intelligence where it matters most: tagging, search, governance, rights management. And it's not about replacing systems, it's about augmenting the workflows that you have in place today. And as I mentioned at the beginning, there's a lot of technology out there today. And the key is to make sure that the technology you do purchase and do use is connected. Smart content ecosystems are connected content ecosystems. And better content management leads to faster execution, reduced risk, and a stronger brand consistency. When teams can find, trust, and activate the right assets, everything downstream gets more efficient and impactful. The question you need to think about is when your team is using the new brand elements, is it staying on brand? Does it effectively tell our story? And the more clarity you can give up front, the more confidently it can support your workflows, whether it's tagging, recommending assets, or enforcing compliance. Because really, the future of content operations is not manual, it's dynamic, it's connected, and it's intelligent. And that's the critical aspect of post-launch, is being able to have that ability to control, to discover, to streamline, to use technology to prevent that brand drift that can easily happen if you don't have the right technology in play. So I think we're at time, but Heather, it was super fun chatting, and thanks for your insight on branding and what you need to think about from a rebrand perspective. I'm not sure if we've got any questions. I'll have a quick look at the chat. We've got a question for Heather. In a brand refresh, how do you handle situations where different regions or teams need to adapt the brand but still stay compliant?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question, and it's super common, of course. So we typically, what we suggest with that is actually leveraging your brand guidelines. So when you're talking about your brand architecture that you get, having very clear brand guidelines that can be consistently applied irrespective of regions or teams, so they can adapt the brand within guard. So when you think about guardrails, your brand guidelines give you a little bit of that flexibility to go, okay, so in this application, you can modify it here, here, and here, and essentially that still stays compliant. And the other thing too is we often see almost like a trapdoor. So if people have questions, go, how can I get something approved, and let them know that there is like a place where they can go to and ask questions. Then it again makes it easy for them to test circumstances around the brand guidelines, and you can make, as the centralized marketing decision makers, the yes or the no on whatever the request might be that comes through. If there's some sort of like when you think about sub branding, what it would look like on a piece of signage or on a half wrap of a vehicle or something like that, it allows them to ask you questions so that they're engaging with you instead of cutting you out of the decision. But brand guidelines are a huge part of that.
Yeah, brand guidelines are the foundation. If you don't have good brand guidelines, forget about the brand guardrails.
Yeah.
We got a question here from James. If a company is just coming out of a rebrand, what should they prioritize first to make sure it sticks long term? From my perspective, I think there's a couple of things. One, and it's actually, it should not be, this is stuff that you shouldn't be thinking about coming out of the rebrand. You should be thinking about this at the start of the rebrand. and it's that brand order that Heather talked about. It's metadata, making sure all the assets that you are moving over to the new brand platform, that they are tagged correctly. Without metadata, it is that proverbial house of cards. The second thing is you've made a decision to do a rebrand. Really exciting. You should think about the technology that you need to implement to maintain that brand identity and prevent brand drift. So if you're looking at a digital asset management solution, you should be doing that in parallel. And so that when you do launch your rebrand, you've actually got that dam is already in place, it's already operational. And typically at Media Valley, it takes about 3 months from launch, from kickoff to launch, depending on the quality of the metadata. But I would say a rebrand is a really key time or the right time to assess the technology that you're using in your content ecosystem. Great. Well, I think those are the questions. A couple of things. Just we've got some more sessions this afternoon, so we're going to continue the brand governance theme with a session on how AI templated content workflows accelerate production while maintaining brand consistency. And then we're going to dive into ROI and how to calculate and maximize your DAM investment. Ease of use equals faster adoption equals increased time to value. So that'll be a great session. And then tomorrow morning, we're going to kick it off with a great session with the always engaging John Horodisky of AVP. He's going to talk about that DAM AI gap and the things you need to be thinking about to prepare and lay the foundations for future content success. Also tomorrow, we've got Walker Advertising and Schulich School of Business sharing their experiences with AI-powered digital asset management to optimize their content operations at scale. And we're going to do a deeper dive into metadata. So if you have questions about metadata, this is a great session to attend. We're going to talk about how you can supercharge your content velocity using metadata. Absolutely critical if you're looking to bring technology into your content ecosystem. And then we have a demo I'll be on with Marcus Raddick from PageProof. We're going to talk about final file delivery and talk about how you can scale your approval workflow without scaling manual effort. So if you haven't heard from Marcus from PageProof, he is a great presenter. So I'm looking forward to that session as well. If you haven't registered for these sessions, you can do by going to MediaValley.com. And finally, thanks for being part of today's session. We'll get the recording out to you. And Heather, thanks for your contributions. It was great chatting with you.
You're very welcome. It was lovely to be here. Have a great rest of your afternoon and enjoy DAM Week.
Yes, thanks, Heather. Thank you, everyone.